everyone. A very warm welcome back to The Doctor Will See You Now. And I have to be honest with you, the Doctor is trying very hard not to get overexcited about this conversation. If you are a frequent viewer or listener, you'll know how much I enjoy interviewing authors and finding out about their craft and their process, and all that goes into developing those wonderful stories that we get to enjoy. Well, today's author makes me want to bounce even higher. Today's author is someone whose work has influenced me from the beginning, an author whose work enabled me to make some difficult professional changes, and to finally get to be in conversation with them about their work is an absolute thrill. But I'll do my best not to get overexcited about our conversation. Asa Larsson, it is an absolute honor to welcome you into the consultation room. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for the most excellent stories that you've brought to us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me as a guest. I'm really happy.
Wonderful, wonderful. I would like to talk to you about your work in general, but we'll also take some time on your latest novel. It's the 6th in the Rebecca Martinson series, the Arctic Murder series, as it's called in English. And the novel is called The Sins of the Father, or The Sins of Our Fathers, depending on whether you're catching it in the UK or in the States. An amazing series, award-winning from the beginning. The debut novel, Soulstorm in Swedish and Savage Altar in the UK was the title. So winning that debut award for crime writing, and then subsequently also your work has just garnered so many awards and prizes and great critical acclaim. So again, viewers, listeners, if you are looking for a new series and you are fond of some Scandi noir, Nordic noir, then seriously, Asa's series, it's for you. And you'll wonder why you never found it sooner. Anyway, to our conversation. Asa, I wonder if you would begin by explaining to us how a tax lawyer, your profession, how a tax lawyer like you began the journey with crime fiction. Why?
Well, I grew up as the only child in my family, and I wrote a lot and draw a lot. And then I moved and went to uni and studied law and became a tax lawyer. And when I expected my first child, I suddenly realized that my life had become so dull on the inside of my head.
Wow.
And you're not supposed to feel that way when you're expecting your first child. But that, because I had stopped writing altogether. I was just, now I'm becoming a lawyer with a briefcase and a suit and everything. And so I took up writing again, and it was just such a undescribable joy, and I felt free. And writing is, I'm sorry if you hear something in the background, it's just my dogs moving around, so sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Writing is creating a room of your own, and I really felt that. And then I thought to myself, I want to write a novel. I cannot get really, really old, which was 50 when I thought about that. I cannot get 50 years old and and never have given myself the chance to finish a whole story. So that is how it started. I started writing my first novel, Solstorm, Savage Altar, when I was pregnant with my first child, and I finished it when I was pregnant with my second child.
So the creativity around giving birth, not only to two lovely human beings, but also that creativity that allowed you to give birth to that first novel. It's interesting, isn't it, what sets that process in motion. And thank you for sharing, those very personal aspects of how that first book came into being. If we consider the titles, and I'm not sure what the titles are all like in Swedish, but in the 6 books, the titles in English feel that they have a religious aspect to them. Do you feel that your work has that? Did you want to bring that out, or is it just by chance that the titles are like that?
No, I think that the Bible is present in my writing, and also for me as a person. I come from a deeply religious family on both my father's and my mother's side, called the Lestadians in Sweden. Very strong Christian community especially in the northern part of Sweden. My father and mother were not Christians. They were on the left politically, and so this was sort of a thing in my family. But the Bible and church and all of that has always been a big part, especially for me in my youth. And I belonged to a free church. I don't know if you say that in English, when I was in my teens. And I think that what you sort of experience when you are a young person, what forms you then will come out in your writing later. So it's not by chance. And it's not just because they sound good. Actually, I have people have a hard time remembering my titles in Swedish, because it's from the Bible, so they are more like Asa Larsson's first, second, third.
Yeah, they're better remembering numbers than they are quotes from the Bible. Again, I love how the past informs what has been your present writing, and part of that, of course, is the dual location. How so much of your writing is set in the north, in and around Kiruna. And was it a very easy choice to write there as opposed to simply set your work in Stockholm? Was it important for you, and what does that mean for you to be able to talk about the north?
It wasn't a choice, really. I think it was the only way. I always say that from the north we export iron and wood and water power and people. Young people move to the south, they go to the university, they get an education, and they don't move back for different reasons. For me, because there were no jobs for a tax lawyer in Kiruna, and also I had met the father of my children, and he was not from my part of the country. So for me, I think that writing has always been a way of keeping in touch with my own culture, with that in heritage, curing my homesickness.
Yeah.
So for me, it was supernatural to write about the North.
Mm. And in doing so, it enables you to bring in the beautiful setting, the climate. Now, when over the years, as many of the discussions have gone on around Nordic noir, Scandi noir, and talking how the setting is often, another protagonist in the stories. Do you feel, as an author and as a human being, do you feel a deep connection with those surroundings, with the nature?
The surroundings are really important to me in my writing, but also the town itself, Kiruna itself. It's a small mining community, and in this last novel, I made the town a crime victim. So yeah, it's important for me.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we can say, because I don't think it's giving too much of the story, the plot away, because it's there in the information. Of course, this idea of the town being moved, and this of course is not fantasy, it's not fiction. This is a fact. How do you feel about what is happening in real life with regard to that place?
Oh, I feel so many things. This novel is set in 2016 when they had started the moving of the town. Now, when I was home in Kiruna just last week, and the time before that, when I went up there, the new city center was opened, and the old city center was still there, but it was a ghost town. It was completely empty. And last week, when I went up there, they had started to tear the city down. And you feel many things. I'm grateful because without the mine, Kiruna would not exist.
Yeah.
It is our livelihood. But seeing the place where you grew up, and the houses and buildings that are connected to your own story and your own memories, just being torn down, it's a do you say grieving process?
Yes,
Would you
you
say?
do. You do. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that is the case for a lot of people who live in Kiruna. We know it has to happen. We don't object, but that doesn't mean that we don't mourn.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate what you say about how an industry provides people with work, and provides people with purpose, and if those changes have to happen. But yeah, but to mourn what was, that has, it has to go. I suppose, the only thing that I was said is may the present and the future of this, new Kiruna, shall we call it, may it bring much joy to the people, that live there.
Yeah, from your mouth to God's ear.
Yeah, totally, totally. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, of course, your series, Rebecca Mortensen, or the Arctic Murder series, highly successful, both in book form and also in the adaptations. TV series that we've been able to enjoy in the UK, and I'm sure it's traveled around the world. And I just wondered, how does it feel as the person who has created these stories? And reading a story allows us, as the reader, to imagine these things, to view these things, whereas when we're presented on the screen, we are given the image that we should consider. How do you feel as the author seeing that your work, take on that different dimension?
Interesting question. I think that the worst thing for a TV series producer or a movie producer, the worst thing is an author leaning over him or her, having opinions,
Yeah.
because that would restrict their own creativity, right? So I have really tried not to meddle. But I was afraid, and I must say, I like them. I have liked them all very much, for different reasons. But one reason in particular is that they have not exotified the people or the environment.
Yes.
They dress like ordinary people do up there. So I have appreciated that so much. But I was afraid when I started writing this last novel about Rebecca that all of the actors, who I think have done a really great job, would move into my head and sort of take over my own, my own
Yeah.
characters, my own
Yeah.
visions. And they did, but it didn't hinder me. Is that the right word?
It
Hinder.
is. Yes. Yeah.
So I was surprised by that that they could sort of melt together in my head, and it was no problem.
Wow. I would never have. I would never have envisaged that kind of response, to do with the continuing the writing after those things have been put on the screen. Yeah. Hmm. Thank you, thank you. Now I need to ask you, and I hope it's okay to ask, because this sixth book, there's been quite an amount of time between the fifth and the sixth book, and I wondered if you could share with us, the idea of taking the story back up again. What did that feel like? And of course, this is the final book in the series, so again, the idea of coming to a point of we're done. What are your thoughts on these aspects?
Well, first of all, it is not good advice to let 9 years pass between the fifth and the sixth book in a series. But I started writing this latest novel, and maybe I hadn't matured enough to write
Okay.
what I wanted. Maybe I felt a little stuck with Rebecca and that universe, because as people do in bad marriages, they cheat. So I, instead of finishing this novel, I wrote a children book series.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So I did that, and that took a number of years. And then I, picked this novel back up again, and it was hard. It was like, going to the therapist with your bad marriage that has gone cold. But you do what a writer do. You write and write, and you come to a point where you have suddenly written yourself into the story again. And when you start loving it again, and it turned out differently, I think, than it would have. I know than it would have if I had finished it 9 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. That analogy that you use of a bad marriage, and maybe that's the thing of with a little more experience in life, a little bit more understanding, that you can come back and say, hey, things have happened between us, but I want to do this. I don't want to let this go. And so
And
when
it's
you
sorry,
forgive me, go
and
ahead.
it's a privilege, being able to afford to wait. Not every author can do that.
Yeah.
You have to support your children, you have to pay your rent. But I could allow myself to take a break, write children's books that are, you don't earn that much money writing books for children. And so it was a gift, and I took that. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. It's a gift, a gift. Rebecca Mortensen, definitely a gift for the readers. I wonder for the author over these years, thinking again of a relationship, you and that character, how do you feel about her now as to the time when you first met her and now when you're saying, goodbye to her? What are your thoughts on this woman?
Well, that's an interesting question. When I started writing about her, we were more equal in age. My children were, just and now maybe not mother, but definitely very much older sister. So I think that I am both more irritated nowadays with her and more compassionate. And I have a better understanding of her, maybe because it's been 20 years that I have written about
Yeah.
her. So I think that by understanding myself a bit better, I understand her a bit better.
But it's time to say goodbye to her. Is it difficult to let go, or are you ready for this?
Both. It's difficult, but I'm ready. I'm very anxious and I'm happy. So all of those feelings, within an hour. So I think it's true about almost everything in life that you sometime must have the courage to let go.
Yeah.
And courage for me, because I mean she has supported me financially and my children for many years. But if you can leave a job that you're not happy with, or leave a friendship or a relationship that you are finished with, it takes courage, and it is scary because you seldom know what awaits you around the corner, right?
Yeah.
But I know that it is the right thing to do, because I do want to develop as a writer. So it's time to write something else.
So I don't want you to tell us about what might be coming next, because we still need to enjoy book 6. But do you have ideas that you're ready to develop?
I have ideas. I have allowed my head to take a break and think about whatever and read about whatever.
Yeah.
And I have started writing something, but I'm not sure it's going to, be anything. But I am writing now, and it's just, I'm just trying to hold on to the joy of it,
Yeah.
not thinking that it has to be anything or become anything. So I am trying to enjoy the freedom.
Great. Now, if you don't mind, if we could just return to the sins of the father, because doing a little bit of reading about your background, and skiing is a sport that, is important, been important in the family. But
Yes,
in
my
this,
my my grandfather won the Olympic gold medal 1936 competing in Garmisch-Partenkirchen. So skiing has been a big thing in the family.
yeah, yeah, and well done, grandfather. But in this book, the sport of boxing is brought in to the story, and I wondered why. I mean, there are so many sports you could have chosen, but boxing, Asa, what is this about?
Well, I didn't know s- squat about
Yeah,
boxing. You
yeah,
say
you
squat.
do, yeah.
But I was in this radio studio, uh, and the sidekick of the host, he was a boxer, and so the host, at the end of the interview, she asked me, well, if you were to write a book about him, what would it be about? And I don't remember what I answered. I blabbed on for a little bit about his tattoo and how maybe every tattoo could be like a chapter of the novel. Very bad answer. But when I left that radio studio, this boxer had moved into my head and refused to leave. I did not want to write about him because I didn't know anything about boxing. But he was just there. So what do? You do your research, and it was heavy work. But as with everything, the more you know about it, the more fun it gets. So nowadays I watch boxing with my son still.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a reason why a lot of writers, Joyce Carol Oates loves boxing. A lot of authors have written about boxing, and I think that it is, it's just two people in a ring, life and death, and also a poor man's sport.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you, very, very few succeed, but if you do, there is a class journey that resembles nothing. So the glory that awaits is great, but the victims are many. So I think that there's a big attraction to write about boxers and boxing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Fascinating. I love what you said about how a character developed just in a conversation, and then that character wouldn't leave your head. So you had to do something with them. I really appreciate you sharing your process about characters and things like that. Um, an element of the story, and of course it is a theme that crops up in much Scandi Nordic noir, is that dark past, and the struggles during the Second World War, the political struggles, the social struggles. Um, Again, for you to include this, is it an important strand of a nation's history that you want people to still think about?
Interesting. I think that a lot of Swedish writers, sooner or later, they, especially when they write crime series, but also in ordinary novels, sooner or later they will write about the time during the Second World War.
Yeah.
And why is that? Maybe because Sweden, I'm trying to tread carefully here.
Of course, yeah.
Sweden has been bad at, how do I put this in English? At acknowledging the part we took in the war. We called ourselves as neutral. Of course, we weren't. And for me, it was nothing I learned about in school. How the transition traffic with soldiers through Sweden up to Narvik, Norway. The big what do you call it where you store stuff, förråd in
Yeah, and I can think of it in Spanish, almacén. Yeah,
well,
like the warehouses. Is it a warehouse?
exactly, the
Yeah.
big warehouses that the Germans had in cities in the northern part of Sweden also. So this was all new to me, and so it became the background of the story in my fourth novel.
Yeah, yeah, and I you know, I think again the idea of, can we ever escape our past? And it, you know, and to come back to the title of the sixth novel, and you know, for you, is that the case, that it's not necessarily the things that we are doing, but it is that our past and things that people in our family or in our communities, we'll call them their sins because it fits with the novel. Do you think we're ever able to be free from that, or do we always carry it within?
I think it's possible to set yourself free, at least to a degree, but not without acknowledging, confronting, and coming to peace with it in one way or the other. And I think that what you find out as a person when you're young, you don't have that perspective, but as you get older, I think people realize how much your history forms you as a person. You ask yourself, why am I this way? Or why do I always keep repeating this pattern? And when you look in your back mirror, there is a chance for you to lay the puzzle.
Yes.
And by that, maybe try to change. Oh, sorry, we should have this discussion in Swedish.
We really should, although I fear that whilst I might
I'm
understand you,
struggling.
yeah, you're doing wonderfully.
Oh,
Seriously,
thank you.
you are doing wonderfully. And I know the vast majority of viewers and listeners probably would not be able to do the Swedish. So we're just grateful that you're doing this also. And seriously,
Be
all,
patient, you listeners out there.
yeah, all is good. All is really, really good. I'm six novels, a fabulous series. I know, wonder. I'm going to maybe give you a difficult question here, and not because of the English, but because of the decision you need to make. And my question is, in the series as a whole, what is it as an author that you are proudest of?
That I developed through the series as an author. I let the stories take their time, and because sometimes you read an author that you love so much, and the series kind of just goes down, and I think the most dangerous thing for an author is not imitating others but imitating yourself.
Yeah.
And I think the books really are different from each other in this series, and I also believe that this last one is my best one, and that's my opinion. But just to feel that, and being proud that I like I didn't just tramp along and
Yes,
I wasn't lazy. So yeah, I'm proud of that.
that's beautiful. I think that's so important because it must be it must be one of those occupational hazards as an author that if you find a formula that readers
Exactly.
like, you know, to tread that fine line between giving the reader again, in a sense, that security, but without just being formulaic and as you say, repeating yourself, not taking from other authors, but just doing yourself again.
And I
Um,
think that is also what is at the top of your head. It is, you create paths in your brain, and you very easily go on those paths again. So just stopping, thinking, what can I do differently? And yeah.
Asa, it has been an absolute joy and privilege to spend time with you, to hear you talk about your work and those issues that are important to you around being an author. Um, we wish you all the very best with this last book in the series, but we also look forward to what might be developing beyond. All I would ask is please don't let it be 9 years before your next book comes out, because it's an absolute joy to read you. Viewers, listeners, again, if you, of course, if you've read Asa Larsson and you'll have been waiting for this sixth book eagerly, and may you have just some fabulous reading hours with that. And again, if you haven't read Asa, well, I envy you that you can start the journey with book one. Asa, I hope we get a chance to get to chat together, um, like this, or maybe even face to face, and maybe even over coffee in Stockholm sometime. And you can
Yes.
speak to me in Swedish, and
When you're in Stockholm, we will have a Swedish conversation at a Swedish coffee shop. It's a deal. I would
perfectly.
love that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, for now, just to say goodbye and see you soon.
Mm. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.